Before throwing a single chain or strap on any load, it's important to visualize the whole load. Check it out. See the whole load, what's on top, what's underneath. Make sure you see the whole load before you set up your chains and straps so that everything gets appropriate securement. This is particularly important with New Millennium loads because they're really good at hiding stuff up on top when they load these. Look at both sides, look at the top, look at the back before you throw a single chain. Once you've got a game plan in mind, do the preliminary setup. Get your chains pre-positioned and your load securement will go much faster. As you see the driver here, he's getting all of his chains pre-positioned before he throws the first one. New Millennium does not like you and does not want you on the trailers if at all possible. So when pushing a belly chain through, or a chain that's going through the load, rods are provided so you can hook the chain onto it and push it through. Simply hook the chain onto the front of the rod, line it up, make sure you give yourself enough slack, and give it a good shove. DOT does require any load that is 3 tiers or more must have belly securement or securement through the load. Our rule of thumb here, if it's a 2-tier load or higher on a New Millennium load, you gotta have some chains going through that load, not just over the top. This is specifically important when you have a joist deck load. You got to get some good securement on that decking. By putting chains through the joist, you achieve this. Once you have your chains through the middle, it's time to go over the top. Chain placement over the top of the joist needs to go over the peaks on the joist. This is the strongest part of the joist, and when you tighten them down, will prevent the joist from bending in between. DOT guidelines specify that you must have at least 2 pieces of securement in the first 10 feet of the load and at least 1 piece of securement every 10 feet thereafter. As a general rule of thumb, We put at least 2 pieces of securement the first 10 feet, and then at least 1 piece of securement every 8 feet thereafter. Right here, the driver's checked. He's got ample chains where he needs them. The last thing he does is push through a safety chain. This will prevent the load from wanting to slide forward in the event of a hard brake. Once you have your chains placed, it's time to secure them on the passenger side. As a rule of thumb, we always bring the chain down on the back side of the pocket or the barrel and up on the front. Down on the back side, up in the front. This lessens the amount of chain available, the amount of slack available, should the load want to move forward. And again, pointing out when going through the load, you want the chain to go through the valley or next to a support. As you can see here, once this chain is tightened down, not only will it keep it from moving forward in the event of a hard brake, but it will also not hurt the joist because it is right next to the support factor. Now it's time for the binders. Pull the excess slack all the way out of the chain, and then hook up your chain the exact same way you did on the other side. Down on the back side of the pocket or the barrel, up in the front. Down on the back side of the barrel, up in the front. You want good tension on the chains, but you also don't want to destroy the product. Once you have your chains pre-positioned and attached and you're ready to tighten the binders, always start with the lowest binders first. Create a good base from which to build from. And don't be surprised to hear a little popping and banging when you start to tighten these down. And as you can see, our driver here, he's given himself a good 3.5 feet between the trailer and the loading rack in order to use his load bar without any problem. And to reiterate, you see the chain going over the peak or the points of the supports on the joist. That's perfect chain placement. The chain might dig into the angle iron a little bit. Though we don't like that, we can deal with it. What we don't want is the middle of the joist bending. Once you have all your binders tightened, you need to go back and make sure that one of them didn't loosen up, or multiple loosen up. This is common. As you tighten one side or one end, the other loosens. You will have to go back and reset these before you leave. New Millennium loads have a tendency to settle in on themselves as you go down the road as well. So it is imperative that you stop and check your chains 25 to 30 miles after you've left New Millennium. Once all chains are on and tightened, the last thing you put on is the safety chain at the front. Give it a little back angle, and it'll keep things from moving forward. Lastly, wrap your excess chain around the binder handle and attach a bungee to it to hold it in place. Make sure you have some good tension on the bungee. What this will do is not only keep the chain wrapped around the binder handle, which will keep the binder from opening and going down the road, but will also put tension on the binder and on the chain in case it should loosen a little before you have a chance to stop and check it. That way you don't have a chain dancing around while you're going down the road. And yep, found one that loosened up. Deck loads and joist deck loads specifically have a lot of tendency to loosen up after you've tied them down. The decking has a lot of compression left in it once it's on the trailer, and as you tighten it down, it compresses and compresses. You may have to retighten your chains multiple times before you're done. Notice how much that strap loosened up after the chains were on it, and we're good to go. This particular load had some pieces and parts up front. It's always a good idea just to throw those in the side box. And then we also have some actual steel up front. This has to be secured as well. Our driver here is using some short straps that he's hung on to. Occasionally you may have a strap get a cut in it. Instead of throwing the whole thing away, if you've got a good 10-12 feet worth of strap, it's beneficial to hang on to it for situations just like this. And make sure when you're tying straps down near the front of the trailer, keep the winches away from your drive tires. If that means you have to reposition the material on the deck a little bit before you tie down, then that's what you need to do. The rule of thumb here at Logisticize is steel on steel. With a small light product like this, however, straps are fine. Just make sure you use edge protection. The edges are extremely sharp on this material. The driver gets the straps in place. And then snugs them up before he puts edge protection on, so the edge protection doesn't fall out of place. And notice he fold and tucks, not just wind the whole thing up in the winch. This takes much less time and will be more secure. Edge protection can come in many forms. Here we've got some old straps that work just fine that he saved and cut up. We've got some small pieces of rubber. He's going to use a combination of both on each side. Once you have your edge protectors in place, hand tighten. Make sure your edge protection stays in place, and then crank it down. Once you have all your load securement in place, now you can remove the two 4-inch straps that New Millennium put on the load to give it some stability. You cannot remove these straps before you have your load securement on it. Once you have your load securement on it, remove the carabiner clip, remove the strap. Both the clips and the straps need to be returned to the guardhouse before you depart. Once you arrive at the departure line by the guardhouse, go back and check your load. Did anything loosen up just in the short trip you made to the front of the lot? It does happen, especially when you have decking on board. Once you've done that, grab your straps and your carabiner clips and report to the guard shack to turn them in and get your paperwork. Make sure you sign all the appropriate copies in the appropriate places. If you're not sure where, of course, just ask the guards. With this particular load, there's a set of paperwork for the joists, there's a set of paperwork for the decking, and you have to sign in a separate place for the boxes and the bags of material that you put inside your box. Once you're back in the truck, make sure you write the logisticized load number on the driver's copy of your bill of lading, and then enter your new trailer number and the bill of lading onto your logs. Once that's done, it's time to go trucking.